What would you do if your own mother slapped you across the face in front of 200 guests just because you said, "No, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just turned back and stared at her"? Because in that moment she had no idea who was watching. They called it the wedding of the season, a garden ceremony in Northern California, all soft gold lighting, white roses spilling over archways, and a guest list curated like a lifestyle spread. I arrived alone as usual, navy blue dress, tailored, heels that clicked sharp against the flagstone. I didn't need to announce myself. I never do. But I felt the air shift the moment I stepped into the reception area. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else. A beat too long between greetings. A flicker of recognition from relatives who squinted like they couldn't remember if I was the sister or the cousin. I hadn't even made it to the champagne when I saw her. Linda, my mother. She looked flawless, of course, hair, sculpted skin glowing under thousands of dollars in makeup. But I knew better. I've always known. Underneath the perfection was the same razor-sharp edge I grew up with. She moved toward me, not like a parent welcoming her daughter, but like a PR agent greeting a complication. "Rebecca," she said, kissing my cheek. "You made it." "I RSVP 3 months ago," I replied, voice even. She smiled tight. "Well, you know how busy you are." Translation: "You're never around when the family needs you." Not that she ever defined what need meant, because in this family it wasn't about love, it was about control. And I'd learned early on how not to flinch when affection was used like currency. The bride was my younger sister Hannah, golden child, wedding dress Barbie. She had always been the spontaneous one, the pretty one, the one whose mistakes got chalked up to being free-spirited. I, on the other hand, was the workhorse, the fixer, the one who quietly paid for Hannah's tuition, her first car, her emergency moving expenses. And now apparently I was supposed to offer up my penthouse like it was just another bullet point in the family spreadsheet. I hadn't even sat down before my mother whispered, "Do you have a moment for a quick family chat?" No warmth, no curiosity about how I was doing, just an agenda. I paused deliberately. "Sure," I said, "but I'd like a drink first." I made my way to the refreshment table, poured myself a glass of champagne, and gave myself 3 full seconds to breathe. And that's when I felt it. The lining up, the chess pieces moving, a glance from an uncle, the hush of conversations that dipped just as I passed. I scanned the garden, the fairy lights, the clink of forks, the cello playing something vaguely cinematic, and I felt it in my bones. They weren't celebrating, they were circling. I took a sip, braced myself. Then Hannah appeared. Designer gown, high-gloss smile, perfume that always made her smell more expensive than real. She slipped her arm through mine like we were sisters in a shampoo commercial. "There she is," she beamed, "the woman of the hour." "Isn't that you today?" I asked, careful. She laughed. "Oh, don't be like that. It's your penthouse that everyone's been talking about." And there it was, the trigger, dressed up in pearls and passive aggression. I followed her eyes and saw my mother again watching us from across the lawn like she was refereeing a deal. Her eyes didn't soften. They calculated. "We just want to talk," Hannah continued, still smiling. "There's a better way for all of us to live. And it starts with that property." I didn't flinch, not yet, because I already knew where this was going. They thought I had come here as a guest, but I had come ready, and they were about to find out I was no one's pawn. They didn't ask, they expected. And that's where everything cracked. We sat down at a round table tucked along the edge of the garden, framed by white roses and that overly polite hum of string instruments. But nothing about what came next was gentle. My mother didn't waste time. "Rebecca," she began, folding her hands like we were in a boardroom. "You know your sister and Adam are starting a family. They can't keep living in that cramped little apartment." I nodded slowly. "They just got married an hour ago." "Exactly," she said sweetly, "which is why we're planning ahead." Then came the blow. "We want you to transfer the deed to your penthouse to them, as a wedding gift." I nearly choked on my champagne. A gift, I repeated. Yes, she confirmed, face blank. Think of it as helping your sister start her life right. You already have so much, Rebecca. I leaned back, forced stillness. You mean the penthouse I worked 10 years to afford the one I bought in full after closing a multi-million-dollar real estate deal you told everyone was just luck? Hannah cut in, voice sugary. Come on, Becca. You've always been the practical one. You don't even like big spaces. I blinked. It's 2 400-square-foot units combined. I live there. It's not a vacation home. But you live alone, she added with that tilted head look of fake sympathy. And there it was, the dagger, not about the square footage, about the sin of being a woman who didn't apologize for having more and needing no one to get it. My mother stepped in again. It's not like you're giving it away. Think of it as keeping it in the family. You mean giving it to the family? I corrected. Her smile sharpened. Don't be difficult. I looked at them, mother and daughter, framed in sunlight, dressed in champagne tones, and entitlement staring at me like I was the one disrupting the harmony. You have the power to give something meaningful today, my mother said, voice dipping to a theatrical solemnity, something that honors this family. I smiled faintly. And you have the nerve to ask for it in public, hoping the soft lighting and string music would make me too polite to say no. Hannah's eyes narrowed. So, is that a yes? I finished my champagne, set the glass down gently. No, I said. It's a hell no. For a moment, the entire wedding stilled, as if the air around us had to catch up to the words. Hell no. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. But the ground beneath us shifted. I saw it in the twitch of Hannah's fingers, the flicker in my mother's perfectly powdered cheek. Then came the storm. You ungrateful little girl, my mother hissed. I'm 35, I replied, and very grateful, to myself. I rose slowly, smoothing my dress. My heart was calm, strangely. No adrenaline, just steel. I'm going back to the reception now. I'd like a slice of cake before this turns into a courtroom. You're making a scene, Hannah snapped, standing beside my mother like a perfect echo. No, I said evenly. I'm refusing to be used. There's a difference. And that's when it happened. The slap. Sharp. Sudden. Real. Not theatrical. Not movie drama. Just sound and skin and shock. Her hand struck my cheek. My head turned slightly, not from the force, but from the pure disbelief that it had actually happened. A gasp rippled through the garden, like wind through dry leaves. Conversations dropped. A glass shattered in the distance. The quartet stopped playing mid-note. All 200 guests turned toward us. And just like that, the wedding wasn't about love anymore. It was about violence disguised as family. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just turned my face back slowly. And that's when I saw her. Nora Green, a federal prosecutor. A woman I had helped silently 3 years ago when her late aunt's estate was nearly stolen by distant relatives. I'd taken the case pro bono, won it, never asked for thanks. Now she was standing across the lawn heels, sinking into grass eyes locked on mine. And in that single steady gaze, I knew. I had a witness. When your silence is more powerful than their screams, that's when they realize they've lost control. My cheek was burning, not from pain, from clarity. That slap, it wasn't just a strike. It was a declaration you don't belong unless you submit. And still, I didn't move. I stood there, hands still at my sides, breath, even eyes steady. The garden had turned into a vacuum, whispered gasps, clinking forks frozen mid-air. A few phones already pointed in our direction, some discreet, some not even trying to hide it. The silence after a public hit. It's not quiet. It's heavy, suspended, like the world itself is waiting for your next move. I turned my head slowly back toward my mother, and I said only one thing that was a mistake. She didn't flinch, not visibly, but her jaw tightened. Her chest rose slightly, caught in the moment she couldn't reverse. You deserve worse, she spat. You've always made us feel like we were beneath you. Beneath me, I felt my pulse not from fear, but from the sudden sobering realization that they never saw my success as theirs to celebrate, only to tax. I scanned the crowd. Murmurs were rising now. Some guests still pretending to look away, others glued to the unfolding scene like it was a courtroom drama, live, unscripted, and far too real. And then just beyond the hedge of white roses, I saw her again, Nora Green. Black sheath dress, expression unreadable, eyes sharp. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but she was watching. She had seen everything. 3 years ago, she'd been backed into a legal corner by her aunt's greedy heirs. The case was nasty, emotional, complicated. No firm would touch it, but I had, and now she was a federal prosecutor, with power, credibility, and a long memory. I turned back to my mother. "You just slapped the wrong woman," I said. Her voice cracked with fury. "You just shame this family." "No," I replied. "You did that the moment you asked me to buy your love." Then I reached into my clutch, pulled out my phone, and started typing. Not because I had a plan, but because I didn't need one anymore. I had facts. I had witnesses. I had limits, and they'd just been crossed. "Rebecca," my mother growled. "Put the phone down. Too late. The message was sent. Just a few lines. Enough. Garden wedding." Mother slapped me for refusing to give sister my penthouse. 200+ witnesses, statement to follow. From across the lawn, I saw Nora slip a hand into her bag and retrieve her phone. Her face didn't change, but she nodded almost imperceptibly. It was enough. I tucked my phone back into my clutch and stood taller. I didn't speak to my mother, didn't acknowledge Hannah's growing panic, didn't address the guests. I simply stood there, burning and calm, because I'd learned something long ago. Silence terrifies people far more than shouting ever could. "Rebecca," my mother said again, her voice lowering. "You're being dramatic." I didn't even glance at her. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the group chat I rarely used. The Circle, a quiet thread of journalists, lawyers, real estate editors, allies I'd built over the years, people with reach, one message. That's all it took. Garden wedding turned violent, public assault, video circulating, statement coming, send. Across the venue, Nora's eyes met mine, and this time she stepped forward, heels silent on the grass, head high, no smile. My mother turned to face her. "What did you just do?" she hissed. "Nothing," I replied, "just letting people know what happened." "You'll ruin your reputation," she snapped. I tilted my head. "No. You already tried that." Behind her, Hannah looked rattled, whispering something to Adam, her brand new husband, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. And I felt it, the balance shifting, the control slipping from their fingers. I wasn't arguing, I wasn't defending, I was documenting. My phone buzzed. "Rachel, Chronicle saw what happened. Would you like to comment? Feature piece on family, power, and money. Mark, Real Estate Weekly. We're covering your recent arbitration case. Should we include today's incident, Clara? Lawyer Table 6, I saw everything. You don't owe them a thing. I stand with you." I looked up. The crowd hadn't moved, but the energy had. A slow, silent pivot towards something they hadn't expected. Accountability. Then came my mother's last gambit. "You think anyone's gonna care?" she hissed. "You think your little tantrum will matter to real people, Linda," a voice said behind her. We turned. It was Nora. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her badge did all the talking. "Linda," Nora said again, her voice calm and crystalline, like the first sound after a power outage. My mother froze. So did Hannah. Even the garden seemed to still. No wind, no whispers, just the rustling of everyone's attention, snapping to the woman in black. "I care," Nora said, stepping forward. My mother blinked. "I care," she repeated, "because I saw everything. I saw you slap your daughter in front of 200 people. I heard your words. I watched your face." "And who exactly are you?" my mother asked, defensive now, her voice shaking, not from emotion but exposure. Nora didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and calmly pulled out a sleek leather badge case, flipped it open with one hand. Federal Prosecutor, she said, Southern District of California. The words hit harder than the slap ever did. There was a pause. Not dramatic dead. Even the string quartet, which had been slowly unpacking their instruments, froze mid-motion. My mother's mouth opened, then shut again. Hannah's hand gripped Adam so tightly his knuckles turned white. And Adam looked like he had just watched his whole future go up in soft pastel smoke. The garden once curated for photo ops and florals had become a courtroom, and Nora Green, she was the judge. I know what assault looks like, Nora said, and that slap wasn't frustration. It was calculated. It was about dominance. She's my daughter, my mother snapped. It was private. No, Nora replied. It was public. And I'm someone who sees abuse every week in courtrooms just like this. Family doesn't excuse violence. I didn't move. I didn't need to. My phone buzzed again. Video link uploaded 3 minutes ago. Mother slaps daughter at Northern California. Wedding, crowd reaction, legal fallout pending. The headline said it all. Nora turned to the guests. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nora Green. I work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. My job is to prosecute federal crimes, fraud, coercion, financial abuse. But before I ever held that title, I was a woman nearly robbed of my inheritance by people who wore polite faces at holiday dinners. A hush rippled through the guests. They weren't just watching drama. They were hearing testimony. And the only reason I still have that home is because of her. Nora pointed toward me. Rebecca Calloway. She didn't charge me. She didn't want recognition. She just said, "This is wrong, I'll fix it." And she did. I felt something in my throat, not pain, recognition. She stood for me, Nora continued, and now I'm standing for her. A few heads turned toward me differently this time, less curiosity, more clarity. This isn't about a penthouse, Nora said. It's about a pattern, a family dynamic that punishes boundaries and rewards silence. I've seen it in court, in affidavits, in bruises that never make it to skin. She turned to Hannah. And to the new bride, you want to begin your marriage on a foundation of manipulation and theft. That's your call. But don't think there won't be consequences. Hannah said nothing. Her face had drained of color. Adam looked like he wanted to dissolve into the monogrammed cocktail napkins. Nora returned her gaze to the guests. What we witnessed wasn't just personal. It was cultural. A reminder that when women refuse to shrink, they get slapped, figuratively or literally. She paused. The silence filled the garden like smoke. And some of us, she said, finally are done shrinking. They tried to shame me into silence, but the crowd chose truth over choreography. Applause. It started small. One hand clap from somewhere near the aisle, my former law professor, I realized. Then another from Clara at table 6, and then more, not thunderous, not theatrical, but real. A slow ripple of affirmation that filled the silence Nora had left behind. I stood still in the middle of it all, not triumphant, not smug, just still, as if my entire life had led to this exact breath. I didn't ask for the moment, but I owned it. My mother stood frozen, face like porcelain about to crack. Hannah, she looked hollow, not like a bride, like a woman whose script had fallen apart mid-performance. The crowd was no longer theirs. The guests were no longer guests. They were witnesses, and the wedding unraveling. Guests began standing, excusing themselves quietly. Some offered tight-lipped smiles, the kind that say, "I'll text you later," when they know they absolutely won't. A woman by the fountain shook her head and said, "I think we should leave." The string quartet began packing up for real this time. Even the illusion of celebration was disintegrating, like sugar left out in the rain. I didn't move. A young woman approached mid-30s blazer camera in hand. "Miss Calloway," she said softly, "I'm with West Coast Legal Affairs. We've been following your arbitration work. Would you be open to commenting on what just happened?" I blinked. This was still my sister's wedding, at least technically, and yet no one was talking about the groom. Fair point. I'm not giving interviews today, I said gently, but here's my card. Across the lawn, Adam was locked in conversation with a man who looked very much like his boss, judging by the man's furious expression and folded arms. Adam kept gesturing, sweating, damage controlling. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt nothing at all. My phone buzzed again. Text. Claire, my assistant TMZ, just picked up the story. Headline, Mother of the Bride Slaps Real Estate Powerhouse in Garden Showdown over Penthouse. Want me to release a statement. Also, we've had 6 new client inquiries since 2 p.m. The irony stung with elegance. The slap meant to shrink me. Had amplified me. I typed back quickly, prepare something brief. Grateful for support. No public comment at this time. Focus remains on serving clients with integrity. I slipped my phone back into my clutch and looked around. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. My mother was pacing now near the rose archway, phone glued to her ear. Her voice carried just enough for me to hear. It was taken out of context. It was just a slap. She's exaggerating, just a slap. Those 3 words would haunt her, not because of the pain they minimized, but because they revealed everything. Guests began filing toward the valet. Others lingered near the edge of the venue, waiting for something else to break. But they all knew it, the curated fantasy, the floral spectacle, the coordinated illusion it was over. And I had done nothing but refuse to hand over what was mine. That's what made it so powerful. I hadn't needed to destroy anything. They had done that all by themselves. And Nora. She hadn't moved. She didn't need to. Her presence alone had shifted the entire narrative. Then my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Rachel at the Chronicle. We're running a feature, Women in Power in Family Dynamics. Your story is the anchor. Should we move forward? Yes, but not yet. I needed to reclaim something first, not publicly, not loudly, quietly, entirely. They tried to erase me with a slap, but I wrote the ending in silence. I didn't storm out, I didn't make a speech, I didn't cry, I just left. No dramatic exit. No shattered glasses or you'll regret this monologues. Just the quiet click of my heels against the flagstone as I walked through the wreckage of a fantasy I never believed in to begin with. The valet brought my car around without comment. He didn't need to ask what happened. By then, everyone knew. By the time I pulled into the underground garage of my building, the notifications on my phone had doubled. Screenshots, mentions, hashtags. Penthouse, gate. Slap heard in, the garden, Rebecca. Was right one clip had already gone viral. Nora Green in her sleek black dress, standing in front of roses and ruined champagne towers, delivering her final line. And some of us are done shrinking. It was being reposted by legal accounts, women's empowerment pages, real estate blogs, even one mid-tier political commentator who captioned it. This isn't about a penthouse, it's about power. But I wasn't thinking about virality. I was thinking about peace. When I stepped into my penthouse, my space, my skyline, my silence, I exhaled in a way I hadn't in years. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. The towering bookshelves, the floor-to-ceiling windows spilling golden light across polished hardwood, the soft hum of a life I built without permission. This wasn't just property. It was proof. Proof of late nights, closed deals, small wins that added up to something unshakable. Proof that I didn't need a seat at their table because I had built my own. I changed out of my dress, made tea, padded barefoot across cool tiles, and opened the 3rd bedroom, the one my mother had once called excess. It was calm now, neatly made. A guest room for allies, not family, for people who showed up without demands. Maybe I'd host Clara someday, or Nora, or a client who just needed a moment to feel seen. That was the real victory. Not the slap, not the speech, but the severing. The quiet, final severing of the belief that I owed anyone anything for simply existing on my own terms. My phone rang. Hannah. I let it ring. A minute later, she texted, "I didn't know she was going to hit you. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at it. Not with anger, not even with sadness, just clarity. She had a new life now. A husband, a new house, probably, and I had mine, a stronger one. I deleted the message. As night fell, I stood at my window mug in hand, watching the city pulse and glow beneath me. I thought of Nora's voice echoing through that garden. I thought of my mother frozen in place. I thought of every woman who'd been told to make herself smaller, softer, more understanding. Not anymore. There would be no more giving from guilt, no more shrinking to keep the peace, no more apologies for taking up space. Just me, in my home, in my silence, in my power, and in that silence, I felt free. Have you ever faced something like this? A moment where you had to choose yourself over your family's expectations? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. We tell real stories here, the ones they wish would stay quiet.